So first of all, my warm congratulations and greetings to the audience. I am Marin Iuga. I'm a certified data scientist, artificial intelligence engineer. I'm an organization builder, and I'm the coordinator of the data intelligence group from the Cluj IT cluster. Together with me, there are three very experienced and very people. Ms. Annika Linck for digital SME, a policymaker. Mr. Iustinian Sovrea, the CEO of jPard, a good and strong organization that delivers IT services. And joining soon again, Mr. Razvan Florian, the director of the Romanian Institute for Science and Technology, and an accomplished scientist as well. So, in this panel, we will discuss one of the most important topics related to AI today, the adoption of AI for business, society, and individuals. So without further ado, I would just like to remind you what an American strategist said at the beginning of the previous century. Those who rule the sea will rule the world. And in the beginning of our century, another strategist, Masayoshi Son, the president of SoftBank, said, those who rule the data will actually rule the world. The speed of AI adoption in society, economy, and all levels of social life will decide in the future what will become history and what will become an empire of the future. So let's start, first of all, with an overseeing, let's say, perspective for the European Union. Ms. Annika Linck will just present us and introduce the topic of the hurdles that European companies have in adopting AI. Ms. Annika, please.
Thank you very much, Marin, and also to everyone else for attending this session. I'm going to share my screen in a second, but maybe just, as a short introduction. So my name is Annika Linck. I work at European Digital SME Alliance. So we are an association of SMEs in the ICT sector. And I really liked your introduction because you were trying to combine this overall strategy and then the concreteness in the daily business or in the daily life. So if we want to make AI work in Europe, and if we want to really be able to be successful in the strategic technology, SMEs are actually a key part of that, because our economies in Europe, they consist to a large percentage of SMEs. So 99% actually of businesses in Europe are SMEs. So this is actually something very important to take in mind. And hold on a second, this is my presentation. Okay, I'm just going to do like this now. Can you please tell me if it works, Mara? Is it working?
I'm not seeing your screen if you're presenting anything. And also, Mr. Razvan, we hear a lot of noise from you if you mute yourself.
Because it was just working now, but now it's not working anymore.
Maybe if you...
I don't know what the problem is. Maybe I need to...
Please rejoin the session.
Rejoin the session, yeah. Okay. Sorry, 1 second.
So, meantime, while Ms. Annika is trying to solve the technical issue, the team we are going to look at is the European Union approach to AI adoption. Somehow European Union recognized that it lags behind the powerful players, which are the US and China. And this is a critical issue from, let's say, a geostrategical perspective, because AI is an enabler of future power, prosperity, and those who can incorporate AI in their grand strategy will be the winners. And of course, the European Union doesn't want to lag behind. The European Union wants to compete. So one of the key areas is indeed the SMEs. For our audience, SMEs means small to medium enterprise. And let's salute again, Miss Annika. Let's try it again.
Yes, apologies for that. I don't know what happened.
If you can present, we just go with just explain us.
Yeah, if it's not possible, I will just explain like this, but it would just be better. So let me just try one last thing. It's very strange. Okay, it doesn't seem to be working. I'm really sorry about that because it's just working right now. But sometimes that's what happens with technical things. So as I just said also, I think it's a very important introduction that or statement that Marin was making, because actually, indeed, if we want to use or because it's an it's very strategic, SMEs are actually a cornerstone of any strategy or any policy in the area of AI, because our business SMEs, so small and medium-sized companies, make up 99% of European businesses. And my organization, European Digital SME Alliance, focuses on those SMEs in the ICT sector. So we have 30 members in different countries in the EU, so regional and national members, among them also Cluj IT. And we represent altogether a network of 20,000 digital SMEs across Europe. And these companies are actually the companies that can help other companies to digitalize. So there are some companies doing B2B software solutions, others are IT security providers, others develop AI solutions in different sectors, others are IT consultants. So overall, companies that are providing digital and emerging technologies to other companies. And we also, as a network, we have worked on, we have gathered companies specifically on AI. So we have developed an SME focus group on AI that works directly together with the European Commission Joint Research Center. So in this group, we have gathered 40 companies from across Europe, bringing and developing AI solutions in different sectors as well. So some in agriculture, others are doing really specific things in media content recognition with artificial intelligence. Others are developing voice recognition systems. So it's a group of leading AI companies from across Europe. And we are actually planning also to extend it to 100 companies. So yeah, this can also be interesting maybe to some of the listeners. And in this group, we work very closely also together with Cluj IT and with Marin. And the idea is to actually do two things. So on the one hand, we want to understand how SMEs in Europe adopt, use AI. And for that purpose, this is actually more the purpose of the research center. And from our perspective, we want to develop joint positions and statements that can help to improve the environment for ICT SMEs and SMEs in Europe towards, when we represent them towards the EU institutions. So we have developed a position paper on this topic, and we want to make sure that the environment is really working for SMEs. So because, yeah, of course, this would be a bit more interesting with the slides, but in general, we know that there's a lot at stake for Europe and SMEs. So when you look at the investment in AI in Europe, in 2016, for instance, it was at 3.2 billion, whereas in North America it was 4 times as much, and in Asia it was double. So in general, Europe is lagging behind when it comes to investment. At the same time, we all know that AI can really increase SME competitiveness and enhance efficiency. So it's very important for us to bridge that gap. And what the European Commission has proposed are 2 things. So in February 2020, they published a white paper that was developing an approach to excellence and trust. And the other pillar is a European strategy for data to increase the availability of data. So these 2 pillars are now the overall approach of the European Commission to AI. And then in that approach, you have different instruments. So via Horizon, for instance, the Horizon research budget, there is going to be programs to foster AI research and innovation. Under Horizon 2020, so until now, there was actually 1.5 billion of investment, which was already a 70% increase from before. So really the EU is putting more money into this. And under the Digital Europe program, so a new program that is focusing really on bringing digital technologies to companies and to the economy and to citizens, there are going to be 2.5 billion euros to help spread AI across the European economy and society. And that money is also going to go into the digital innovation hubs. So local hubs that are going to bring innovation and technologies to citizens and companies on the ground. So this is how this will be working. And
one of the challenges, let's try to basically anticipate your presentation since we can't see it. So one of the challenges that many organizations in Cluj, in Europe in general, is access to the talent pool. We can't find enough talent. And whatever talent, high-level talent we have, is going away to Boston, is going away to Shanghai, or is going away to London. Why then they don't go to Munich or Paris, for example? What do you think, and what the European Union thinks about it?
Well, I can only speak on behalf of our organization, but yes, indeed, it is a big problem that talented people are going to other continents or other centers of technology. At the same time, I do think that in Europe we still have a lot of talent. So we have very good universities in a broad spectrum. So there are many talented people, and maybe from a European perspective, it's also about using the broadness of the talent pool. But of course, at the same time, you also have to keep the talent, the high-level talent, and those people. It seems that what is very interesting for many talented people is to actually work on research on very advanced topics. So actually, what the EU is doing is going in that direction, because by providing companies with the means to invest in research and development through Horizon Europe, for instance, they give companies that are maybe too small to develop their own research programs, they give them the means to take part in these networks, to develop really very interesting things that will also help to retain the talent. So so that is part, even if it's not addressed directly only at keeping talent. I think Horizon Europe and these kind of programs indirectly support this process of keeping talent in Europe. And of course, there are other options, but these are maybe more depending also on national things, like giving companies the option to give out shares, stock shares more easily, and having tax incentives to increase, yeah, just the incentives in terms of financial attractiveness, just to keep talent within their companies.
Mr. Razvan, actually, I have a curiosity here. Your organization uses talent. You are a research organization. You are scientists. That's high-level talent. How do you get them, and how do you keep them?
So we managed to build up almost from scratch two groups of scientists working in artificial intelligence and machine learning, counting up to 25 or 30 persons, and this was quite difficult endeavor. So we had to hire internationally. We had colleagues from countries like Cuba, Colombia, India, Iran, Italy. Yeah, we managed to attract talent even from across the globe, but it was quite difficult, and it's also difficult to retain them because yeah, obviously there are lots of opportunities for people with skills in machine learning.
Thank you. Another barrier, so to speak, Ms. Annika, is access to money. Do you think that is truly the real problem? Because on paper, money are here. We hear about huge sums, billions of euros poured into AI, but actually I can speak on behalf of many people. I don't see them in reality. It seems to be a very bureaucratic process.
Yes, that is actually something that companies in our focus group share as well, in the perception that, for instance, China and the US are much better at really bringing or pushing the money to the companies. So they would, you would have these capital venture funds, and they would just find the companies and use their money to invest and to make money from them. Whereas in Europe, it seems much more difficult to actually to come up with such a system. But I think that also has to do with our culture, which is different in this respect. So in Europe, we have to come up with other solutions to bring that investment to the companies. And there are this is also different from country to country. So that there are some countries that have come up with more sort of maybe state-led investment banks. So in France, for instance, there's the Banque Publique d'Investissement, who is apparently also doing a lot in this respect. And yeah, so there's maybe a need for more of a combination between public money and private one. And actually, this is also something that the European Commission has been doing with their general coordinated plan on AI, and also in terms of increasing the overall investment in AI by providing already the funding through some of these programs, such as Horizon Europe, and then attracting more private funding that goes into the same direction. So yeah. This are just some ideas, obviously, where they're not. There have to be. I think there's a need for different things, but maybe that could help. And I agree, as you said, with the overall statement that there is a problem there, and we just have to make sure that the money gets to the companies.
Mr. Iustinian, as a leader of a company, have you felt the help of European Union programs in society or in your company? Did you benefit, or do you think there is a direct benefit from access to European funds? How is the real life?
Thank you, Marin, for the question. I think there are a lot of benefits from the money European Union gives for innovation, for product development, for boosting economies or companies. It's true that bureaucracy is a barrier for many of us, but I think it's not impossible. We as a company have not used these instruments yet, but I think we will use it in the future. In order to acquire such a financing, you need to have specialized people who are skilled in writing European funded projects. I've seen a lot of, let's say, success stories, also in IT, but also in other fields that impacted society. It's not easy, but I would encourage everyone to let's say, compete for such grants offered by European Union.
Indeed, talent and money, everybody needs them. But there is a difference in AI. AI needs data, unlike other verticals. AI heavily relies on data. Data is a differentiating factor in successful, powerful players. And Ms. Annika, what do you think that the European Union could bring to the table in the respect of data set of high quality data?
Well, as I mentioned, there are these two pillars in the Europeans' approach to AI. So there's the strategy for AI and data, which was launched in February 2020. Sorry, just to make sure, because it sounds like I'm speaking on behalf of the European Commission, but it's not. We're just commenting on it. We're not an, you know, but in principle, from how we observe this as well, there's this European strategy for data, which is about really increasing the availability of data, and which is indeed important for SMEs. So under this strategy, there are 4 pillars. And the first one is focused on setting up appropriate regulatory framework regarding data governance and access and reuse between businesses and within administrations. And then there's a second pillar focusing more on the development of a technological system and infrastructure that would allow to develop a data economy. And then the third pillar is about competences, so skills in society, because they are also needed. And then the fourth one is actually more about specific actions. And that also encompasses the creation of data spaces in many crucial areas. So for instance, in manufacturing or related to green technologies, to the Green Deal, in mobility, finance, energy, agriculture, health also, and skills. And I think this is a good approach in terms of having this access to these data sets. So yeah, this fourth pillar is actually, with the European data spaces, one of these avenues for increasing the access to data.
Ms. Annika, most of our audience, I hope, and I think they are young entrepreneurs or willing or interested to start or basically join maybe a business in the AI. Briefly, what would be the single most important advice you will give to these people?
I think there is a single advice is hard to give, but from when we looking at the companies in our group, I think what they're doing very well is they're understanding that they need to find their niche and their market, and that in Europe, a lot of the businesses or the areas in which we are still very successful are like traditional sectors such as manufacturing or finance or automotive. And a lot of times, these are areas where businesses in AI can bring added value to the existing business and can help to increase efficiencies or bring new solutions. But indeed, it's about finding or combining your expertise in AI with a sectorial knowledge, really trying to develop a business model in that area where you have the knowledge of the field, because this is what you need. You need to understand the business of the specific sector and area, and then you bring in AI to improve solutions.
So basically what you're saying is don't try AI for the sake of AI. Don't compete with Google, don't compete with Facebook, don't compete with IBM. Find the vertical, automotive, finance, and try to enhance and provide a better service through the AI. This is what I understood.
Yes.
So indeed, in the general business model, AI is a service. It's not an industry in itself, like vertical. It's always connected to something. And that's a very good advice, because lots of people try to learn tons of frameworks just to provide the general image recognition, let's say, service. And they play a very risky, and with the odds stacked against them. They try to compete with Google. Google has a lot of data. You don't have a lot of data. Google has a lot of money. You don't have a lot of money. What doesn't Google have? It's a specific deep knowledge of a certain sector. They're trying to do it, but they can't be everywhere. So what you're saying is find your niche and develop your AI on top of that niche, be it e-commerce, which is a very interesting segment for AI. And indeed, I must concede that we are seeing AI being adopted even in Romania with a different speed, of course. And then it's going to change one of the most important, let's say, bridge between business and between individual. These are the management processes. The way we take decisions, the way we justify our decision, and the competitiveness of our decision are going to be heavily influenced by AI. Therefore, I would invite Mr. Iustinian, who's beside the CEO of the company, a good PMI expert and drives a lot of the learning sessions we have in Cluj, to explain us a bit more how management will look in the AI era.
Thank you, Marin, for the invitation and for the chance to be here. I will try now to share the screen, and hopefully it will work.
I see if it works.
Yeah, please confirm if it's there. Okay. So there is a lot of buzz around AI and a lot of questions and a lot of speculation. For example, I'm not sure if you know that according to the World Economic Forum, AI is expected to create more than 50 million new jobs in the next year, but also more than 75 million will disappear due to AI and automation. So AI is transforming our world and people are getting worried. So my purpose today is to address these worries in relationship with the management role. And during this presentation, I will first explain the reasons for this topic. Then we will go through the main functions performed by managers and AI in order to understand who is best and for what. And then we will draw some conclusions. So I will start with the first topic, why I chose this subject. There are three main reasons. One is very subjective, so I will call it personal, and the other two are more generic. My first reason is related to my role in the company. I interact a lot with the managers, and I see that a lot of their time and also my time is spent on processing, analyzing, and producing information. And I believe that a lot of these functions could be replaced by AI so that the managers could focus more on their role. The second reason is related to technology in general, because technology has increased the operational effectiveness of the business, and AI will be used in organization and will increase efficiency. And the third reason is related to speculation, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, because some people believe that AI will soon replace us and eventually dominate us. Before jumping into the topic, I would like to make a statement. From an anthropological perspective, I believe that AI is inevitable. What does this mean? The idea of having a thinking machine has its origin way before the modern computing. Formal reasoning was a topic of interest also for philosophers like Aristotle or Euclid in the ancient philosophy. And later on in the 17th century, Leibniz, Descartes, or Hobbes tried to make the thought systematic as algebra or geometry. I would like to recommend to anyone who is interested in AI to read a little history, because it's important to understand the limits and also the potential of AI. Some people might think that AI is something that emerged recently. You must know that from 1956 to 1974, there was a time called the golden age of AI because of the optimism and the huge financing in this direction. And this was followed in the 70s by the first winter of AI, when expectation failed to materialize and the financing was stopped. Mainly because of the hardware. That's a fine thing. The researcher avoid all that time to use the word AI, and they were using instead pattern recognition or knowledge-based system in order to receive funding. And there are also some success stories in the 80s. Digital Equipment Corporation deployed a solution that assisted the ordering process of a computer company based on customer requirements, and they were achieving an accuracy between 95 and 98. So AI is not something so new as we think. So what do managers do? In very simple words, it's the activity of getting the work done through others. It's a long topic about how people get to be managers, and I truly believe that some of them will disappear in the AI era, and we will see in this presentation how this can happen. Very briefly, management involves decision-making, setting objectives, motivating people, and engaging them. There are several functions of the management, like planning, organizing, leading, staffing, controlling. And all these functions to be completed and pursued by managers require some skills, like being autonomous, having empathy, be responsible, taking action, inspire others, reason, which is very important, learn and understand, and also make decisions. The idea of replacing middle managers, it's not new. And as the topic of AI, it started from the 80s. Why? Because technology enabled the sharing of information down across the organization more efficient than before. And AI cuts the man in the middle. And there is an example that I can give you. For example, when you use Alexa to order food for your cat, for example, there is a chain of activities that is initiated in the food supply, and the human intervention is minimal, from the ordering to the receiving the order and then preparing the package. This could be done, everything automated without people. Okay, so now we have, let's say, a high-level image of what managers do. Now we have to see what does AI do. Over the last 5 years, there was a growth of investment in AI. Artificial intelligence has made a very rapid progress. We already interacted with chatbots, with self-driving cars. There is also AI-generated music and artwork. We saw lately a lot of application in finance and banking. In banking, for example, for loan approval, and AI is able to predict trends. Probably you heard about AI in the stock market, but also in manufacturing. AI is used to make better prediction on purchasing based on historical prices, demand, inventory, and reliability. Large companies like Henkel, Nestle, Procter & Gamble, they launch dozens of new products every year, and they use AI in order to understand why some products fail based on market and the customer behavior. Also in HR, it's very interesting. HR was always considered something very human, and only human can AI helps screening candidates, matching profiles with company expected skills. And I saw some tools that were using image recognition in order to find hidden attitudes in interview. There are also some tools. There is a startup in Hungary who is having the whole process of career path done by AI. That's very interesting. Also, we saw a lot of examples. Assistive AI is used to diagnose different diseases, but also in business. It has a large applicability for business operations, strategic planning, marketing, acquisition. AI, for example, can decide how to invest or how can identify patterns in consumers' behavior that impact, for example, the price elasticity. But we've learned from all these examples that they are developed in silos and they are hardly interchangeable. And there is a missing link, I call it. What do you think is this missing link, and what can this link provide? In contrast to the narrow AI, which is the name for this kind of AI, very specialized, there is a general AI. It's, let's say, it's work in progress. General AI would have the capability to understand or learn any intellectual task that human being can. Unfortunately, there were a lot of initiatives. There is one started in the 80s. They invested until to date like 4 million development hours. That's a lot. It's like 400 or something years, but it's not done by one single person. And they still didn't manage to have a success, or let's say to replace a person. For example, a child can recognize new objects using only a few examples, but we don't have an AI that can, let's say, act as a child and learn new things without data. And there is this limitation. So AI has proven a lot of functions and utilities in management. It can learn, it can understand, it can interact, it can reason, and also predict and execute. In some businesses like logistics or marketing or trading, they are doing a very good job improving productivity, but also replacing layers of intermediate managers. AI algorithms are able to carry out many tasks much faster and more accurately in ways that humans do not have the capacity to do so. For example, in audit, AI can read documents and analyze much faster than a human person. I would like to mention as a reference for you, I discovered it lately, IBM has a project, it's called Project Debater, and it's the first AI system that can debate humans on complex topics. The goal is to help people to build persuasive arguments and well-informed decisions, but it's very interesting how fast and how far they manage to achieve. All this comes with positives and also negatives. Nothing is perfect. So the question still remains: is AI better than humans, than the person for managing? And in order to draw or to go through to a conclusion, I ask myself who is performing better and at what task. And we can see here some function. Managing information, who is performing better, AI or human? Because of the high capacity to operate with data, I believe that AI beats the human on processing data, understanding the context. Being narrow in purpose and application, AI is losing the contextual understanding, and even if replies to clear and well-defined questions, it is missing the bigger picture. So one point for humans here, then reasoning or judgment. AI is very good to identify anomalies, patterns, make prediction, but data analysis cannot substitute the critical judgment. For example, from a project management perspective, AI can give the best decision based on the net present value when you perform a cost-benefit analysis, but it might lose factors that cannot be quantified and affect an investment decision. So one more point for the human. Execution. I think executing a task is done by AI in much faster and much more accurate, and it never gets tired. So one point for AI. We already saw that one of the main functions of AI is to predict based on data. So one point for the AI. Leading organization. Well, that's a long topic, and leading, I think, means more than understanding and using data. So I think here humans are better in leading organization, even though recently I saw a study, 50% of the people who were asked, would you like to have an AI boss? They answered yes, because it's unbiased. And that's very interesting for the future and for what will happen in the future. Okay, there are also some other functions like creating a strategy. And here I gave a point for AI and a point also for humans. Strategic planning is mainly the activity to set priorities and plan resource toward a clear goal. I believe that AI can provide and can create a strategy because sometimes human decision is imperfect and biased, but I think also humans can create a strategy, and even if your project is to create an AI, the humans are creating the strategy. Next point, creating a vision. I think it's obvious, and this point it's related to the next one, inspiring people. The capacity to lead and articulate a purpose and create what it's called emotional resonance with followers is uniquely human. So one point goes for humans. Creating a sense of identity and purpose that attracts people and customers is human. Attracting, retaining, engaging, and developing people, even if AI is used in human research, I think it belongs to people because it's an art to develop teams and also provide this sense of direction, motivation, quality, and empathy. Ethic, I think it's clear machines that learn from data are neither designed to make judgment about what's good or what's bad and have an ethical perspective. The last point on this function is what's called a tone setter. Most successful people challenge the rules and try to adapt the world to their view rather than learn from it and fit in the world. There are a lot of examples like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, which succeeded by going against the trend. The capacity to make a leap of faith out of the box does not exist in the world of AI. And sometimes if you want to beat the market, you must be a contrarian to go against the perceived wisdom of the time, accepting the risk. And I think this is only human. So, a few conclusions. Management is not only about making decisions. General management requires thinking about the future and make it happen, engaging and developing people, balancing constraints and requirements, managing a wide variety of stakeholders. Management is not only about data, it is also about reason, empathy, prudence, entrepreneurial mindset. The ingredients for a good manager are knowledge, experience, rational judgment, emotional intelligence, ethical principles, and the capacity to make decisions with a holistic perspective. This is very, very shortly and let's say high level said. And there is something else, it's the leadership, understood as the capacity to lead wisely, that distinguishes AI from the managers. So on one side, AI provides the chance to perform without precedent in the business, and we should benefit wisely from the advantages that technology provides, but we should never forget what management means and what, let's say, is specific for the humans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iustinian, for the beautiful presentation. Indeed, a very good approach to this topic. It seems that AI is going to be the new boss one way or another. And also it seems that even if it's unknown to all members of our audience, that we are subject to algorithmic decisions. Banks evaluate our credit score. Our finance evaluates our financial risk. And there's not just humans behind it. It's a lot of algorithms and it's a lot of machine learning. How do you think humans, once they consciously acknowledge the role of algorithmic decision, will conform to this decision? They're going to say, I'd rather be judged by a human than judged by a machine.
Yeah, I think this is a very good question, and it will come in the future as AI develops. But I would like to go back a little bit to the roots of AI and why, let's say, AI is on the market and it's still invested in. So I think the process of the decision-making involves also algorithmic decision-making, as you said, based on logic and empirical evidence, but also heuristic decision-making based on subjective judgment, personal experiences. I think AI is a tool that helps us make better algorithmic decisions, and all investment are in this direction, and we should all benefit from this. In the media, you can read a lot of, let's say, cases where this algorithmic decision-making produces some errors and it's discriminating. And there is a famous case in United States. They are using this kind of algorithm to see who is going out of jail and when. And they've noticed that the AI started to discriminate based on different reasons. And I think here is our duty as person to intervene when something like this happens. After all, AI is a tool. In the end, it's a tool. And I think it's our, let's say, duty to stop this kind of deviation from the main purpose. I don't think that algorithmic decision is bad. I think it's limited, and we have a lot of impact on how in which direction goes this decision. As you mentioned, I read another case about giving credit scores. In banks, algorithms were used to see who will get the loan or not, and very interesting that African Americans and Hispanics received a lower credit, and their credit was rejected. It's important to see what happened there, why this happened, and to correct it, because it's our duty not to discriminate.
Humans can be wrong, and so machines can be wrong. And deeply ingrained in our, let's say, social corpus, social mentality, is the concept of accountability. In case, let's say, an algorithm takes a very wrong decision with huge impact, social impact, who do you think should be held accountable? It's a product malfunction, it's a defective service, or it's something else?
What's happening with AI is that we are putting, let's say, a human face. By the way, I think you all know, and you all notice that most of the voices of AI are female. And you may ask yourself, why female and not men? Because they are more attractive, and because they don't represent any, let's say, risk or opposition. And this is the reason why female voices are used for AI. And we try to anthropomorphize the AI, so we try to understand AI as a person. And of course, the concept of accountability comes into discussion. I think accountability belongs to the creator of the AI. I know that there is a problem in the industry of AI, that some decisions cannot be explained, some decisions took by AI cannot be explained, and I think this is a problem, and we should understand and analyze why some decisions are taken. In the end, accountability, in my opinion, remains to the creator and not to the machine.
Ms. Annika, a short curiosity here. So, what do you think from the European legislative perspective is going to come in the accountability and responsibility for AI products? What is the position?
So, yeah, this is currently being discussed, and the European Commission has collected input from all different stakeholders through to the white paper on AI. From our own perspective as an organization representing SMEs in the sector, we think it's important that there's a good balance between not going too much into regulation, but also leaving room for innovation. So you have to have a right balance there. But indeed, it's important to clarify liability risks. So indeed, yeah, even if you don't know who is going to be liable, it's also bad for the people who are developing solutions. So in that respect, there's probably a need to be more detailed here. But I think actually the proposal is going to come in the next months, so we're going to know more in the coming months.
Excellent. And Mr. Iustinian, you've been a project manager a while back ago. I've been one too. And we didn't have this challenge. Not at our time, this challenge did not came. But unfortunately or fortunately for the current project manager, the challenge is going to come. What should they do? They don't want to disappear. They want to reinvent themselves. But what should they do, actually? And how is the education system?
Project managers should embrace AI as any other technology, like an Excel or any other technology that help them achieve or make better decisions. I don't think AI per se will, let's say, eliminate humans, excepting, let's say, the middle, where they eliminate the entire chain and the entire team, for example, but AI will not eliminate the project managers. I emphasized in my presentation that there are some things that, let's say, belong to the humans and cannot be overtaken by AI. Leadership, creating teams, managing teams, it's something that it's still not, it cannot be replaced by AI. So my advice would be to embrace the technology that are helping them. They will make their life easier, and they can focus on other things that are, let's say, more valuable. Regarding education, I saw a lot of implementation of AI in order to learn faster. I can give you one short example. I read about an oil and gas company in United States. They had a problem. In oil and gas industry, you cannot mess up with pipes and devices, and it's a lot of safety involved there. And every time they got new talents in the team, they spent a lot of time learning and in this induction process. This company is called Woodside Energy, and with Watson, they managed to save like $10 million in time. And they transferred all the knowledge from the seniors using AI in an application that is conducting and learning the new talents that are onboarding without human intervention. And the results are spectacular. It's very interesting. You can find the use case on their website. This is an example how, of course, you can save money. Perhaps some people who are focused more on trainings didn't have so much activities in this direction, but it's interesting how with AI you can push further some functions as a manager, like training other people or so.
And one last topic for the management, and it's a topic both for Mr. Iustinian and Mr. Razvan. I start with Mr. Iustinian, then I'll go to Mr. Razvan. In the balance between human decision and algorithmic decision, right now, the humans take most of the decision. How do you think it will change in the future? Will it be 50-50 or machines will take more decision than us?
I think there are fields where AI takes better decision than humans. I can give you an example. In Inditex Group, you know, this brand, fashion brand, Cluj, like Zara and other brands, they started to use AI more intense because the prediction about the market and the consumer behavior and the suggestion made by AI were much better than those of humans. For example, the rate of selling the products was much higher when they went with the AI. These are, I see this as some, let's say, new fields and application. But in the end, if we are speaking about strategic decision, if we are speaking about the direction of a company, I think the people will be those who decide. Probably they will use data provided by the AI, but as I said in my presentation, sometimes you have to go against the common wisdom. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. There is a joke, you know, AI is widely used in stock market, and eventually, if everybody buys that AI or the services, everybody will lose. And there is a joke that said, okay, AI cannot beat humans because it cannot beat the human stupidity. And it's interesting because sometimes stupid decisions, or apparently stupid decisions, are those who are pushing us forward, and those decisions are those who are pushing companies and providing success.
Now to Mr. Razvan, you are a scientist, you surely must see the future. So my question would be, in a, let's say, highly competitive market, who's going to win? Is going to win company with the best AI, or is going to win the company with the best manager? It's a combination of both. It's hard to get a combination. But what do you think?
So you said the company with the best managers?
Or the company with the best
so
AI
I think, of course, the winning combination will be best managers assisted by the best AI possible.
Of course, but if we can't
well,
get both, what do you think?
Depend a lot on the field where this company operates and competes. So if it's something very routinely, so such that the AI had lots of examples to learn from, then maybe AI is better to learn some patterns than humans. But otherwise, of course, humans currently have the edge in general intelligence over artificial intelligence. So if it's something that requires creativity, maybe currently humans will win.
I've seen a lot of, let's say, automated strategy analysis. And one recurring theme for AI is that's very best at executing a strategy, but due to the repetitivity and lack of creativity, has also very exploitable strategies. I think the humans, the managers who can identify an exploitable strategy in the AI of the competition is going to win. If you directly go face to face with an AI in the strategy execution, you're going to lose. AI is actually going to execute it better, way better than you can do it. But due to the limitation of AI, and due to the fact that AI learns for specific example, and due to so-called machine learning blindness, is not creative, it's more of the same. AI has exploitable strategies. And that's currently the topic of, let's say, innovative research, how to shield against exploitable strategies for AI. And as a note, before we move to the next topic, I encourage the audience to write the questions in the chat. Depending on the time we have, we might take questions. But I have agreed with our speakers that we will curate some of the questions you are putting here, And as a follow-up to this event, we will reply on LinkedIn or any page or site that the organizer will put at our disposition. So basically, right now, we have very short time, but such beautiful topics and such beautiful speakers. Therefore, we are trying to do the best of can. And now let's get, we saw the business, we saw the management, and let's go to the individual. How will be the individual, how they say, the common people, be affected by the disruptive AI? We will become smarter. Will be there artificial stupidity for the people as a response to artificial intelligence? What should it be? And let's have Mr. Razvan present a bit about this.
Thank you. So I will talk about the right to information enhancement, how artificial intelligence would be a key enabler of this right, and how all of this could avoid lock-in to monopolistic online services. The issues that are motivating this talk are of two categories. So one is are the issues at the level of individual users. These are that the information we ingest daily, since we are spending more and more time using all kinds of online services. So this information is controlled by algorithms over which we have little control. So basically, when we have time to check some news or posts from friends and so on, what we manage to see is what Facebook has chosen as being most important for us, and we have very little to say about these algorithms and how to tune them and so on. On the other hand, we might need during our daily work or daily activities which are not necessarily work related, to juggle through many online tools such as Trello, Jira, Google Suite, Slack, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and so on. It's a problem that, for example, we cannot have a single messaging application, and instead we have to have this separation into silos where various providers have each developed their messaging app, and they are incompatible. So yeah, these are issues which are not technical in origin, but we still have. At the level of the EU policymakers, they have identified this lack of competition between the big online players and obviously it's about Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and so on. So the EU policymakers have identified this need to ensure more fair and effective competition between such operators and with other providers in order to promote consumer welfare and in order to open up markets to new entrants, including small enterprises, startups, entrepreneurs, and so on, in order to promote consumer choice and in order to drive innovation beyond what can competition law enforcement alone can get from the current practices. So what are the currently proposed solutions for solving these issues? The solution to which both activists as well EU policymakers have converged is basically the same. So activists are proposing that in order to regulate big tech companies, we should, the governments should force them to open up their APIs in order to make it possible for users to have access to each other across platforms and services. And within the EU policymakers, from the European Commission and also the European Parliament, the ongoing policy-making process, which has been running for some time, and it resulted in a draft that will be discussed, is scheduled to be discussed in the European Parliament in 1 week from now. And actually, I would like to thank Mrs. Annika Linck for telling me about this project. It's called the Digital Services Act. This proposal suggests that there should be an ex-ante regulation of systemic operators, which is focused on building up some new regulatory authorities. And these public regulatory authorities should force big tech companies to develop and expose some APIs that would allow users of competing platforms to dock on platforms of these big tech companies and exchange information through these APIs. Yeah, that's what is currently proposed. Of course, there will be some time until this will actually become legislation and will become enforced and will happen in practice. However, what I would like to present here is a new proposal that I think is better. And this is based on what I would call a basic right that we have, that I call the right to informational enhancement. And in a nutshell, what this means is that if we have the right to access and process some digital content through our eyeballs and with our brain and with our fingers, which touch the keyboard and move the mouse and touch some touch screen, then we should have the same rights, the rights to use, to access and process the same digital content, also with some software that we take and use as an informational enhancement of ourselves. So that's, I think, very basic. But and what this would allow, for example, is that we would be able to choose among several applications that would implement different interfaces to the sources of information that we use, such as Facebook, Twitter, or maybe all kinds of new social networks that could appear if such a right would be implemented. And also maybe we would have this interface over messaging system that would make us to would allow us to use a single interface for connecting to all kinds of messaging systems such as WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and so on. And these are just very basic examples, and this can expand to many more use cases. Why is this not possible currently? The reason is that the legislation regarding copyright and also the computer fraud legislation is preventing this. So basically, if somebody would develop such an interface, which is totally possible from a technical point of view, Facebook or whatever other content provider this interface would use might sue the developer of this interface. So for example, in the current terms of conditions of Facebook, you may read that these terms say that you may not access or collect data from our products using automated means without their prior permission, And this copyright and anti-computer fraud legislation is what allows them to enforce such terms. So my proposal is to, instead of all these new regulatory activities envisaged by the EU policymakers currently, my proposal is to just deregulate, basically relax this legislation regarding copyright and computer fraud in order to allow the development of these interfaces. And artificial intelligence is a key enabler of such technical possibilities. So basically, the point is that we do not need APIs, we do not necessarily need APIs in order to automatically parse and understand and process information provided by some online service, because current artificial intelligence methods are able to parse existing interfaces that are targeted to users. So, for example, the HTML, CSS code of a Facebook page can be interpreted by an artificial intelligence algorithm, and information can be extracted from that without necessarily needing an API. So the conclusion is that instead of regulators having to impose building APIs by these big tech companies who actually would not like to build them, it will be against their interests. So instead of regulators having to contrive them with bureaucracy and punishments, this proposal is based on deregulation, letting innovators and startups to build such user interfaces, such new interfaces, and compete for the benefit of users. So in conclusion,
Mr. Razvan, what?
Yeah, so in conclusion,
continue.
the right to information enhancement that I am proposing enables users to be more efficient in processing the vast quantity of information that we use online every day, resulting in increased user satisfaction and empowerment, and also economical efficiencies. And from the point of view of policymakers, it reduces consumer lock-in to big tech operators and promotes fair and effective competition between online operators. Modern AI is a key enabler of a possible implementation of this proposal, but this requires legislative changes, at least at EU level. Of course, USA or China might like to do the same. But yeah, so what I'm proposing here is not something that would work just at the country level. And it has the advantage to be based on innovation, competition, deregulation, which is, I think, much better than current initiatives based on increased bureaucracy, increased regulations, and forcing big tech companies to build APIs that are against their own interests. So,
so basically, what you're saying, Mr. Razvan, is that we have a fundamental right to freely access the data that people create. So people create data for the people, and people should be able to access and process the data, especially social media data. But there is, however, another barrier to doing this. It's not only the legislation barrier, If we want to do it meaningfully, we will need some basic of AI literacy. Like we cannot compete, in current society without being able to read a book or to basically use a computer. Do you think that AI literacy will be a fundamental requirement to basically be socially integrated, to be a successful person in society?
I don't think that AI literacy, in the sense of having to know how to build AI algorithms or how to program AI, I don't think that this will be a requirement. But I think what we will increasingly learn, just because we will encounter many informational systems integrating AI in our daily activities. So what we will learn is to anticipate what an AI system can do and cannot do. And basically by learning this, we will be increasingly more efficient in using these systems. It's a bit like how we implicitly learned how Google search works, so such that we can we know how to adjust our queries and what to expect in principle from a query on Google search. Is also a bit like how a shepherd learns about what a shepherd dog might or might not do. Just because these systems do have a certain autonomy, but which is of course much limited than what we expect from an autonomous person. And we have to basically build up our internal models of what these semi-autonomous systems can do and cannot do. And of course, this will be part of our general knowledge.
But do you think that using AI for, let's say, all of our life, do you think it will create some unfair advantages?
So it depends to whom. If we are talking about individuals, what we have seen is that information processing tools are disseminating quite fast. So for example, a word processor such as Microsoft Word, of course, provides huge advantages to somebody as compared to somebody who has to use a typewriter instead of Microsoft Word. But once such a software is available, then people are rapidly adopting it, so such advantages are disappearing, and therefore they are not unfair because they can be distributed and most people can benefit of these advantages. So I think in the same way, AI tools will pervade our programs that we are using and will disseminate quite quickly, and this is already happening. On the other hand, at the level of big companies, we do see already an important concentration of advantages based on the use of artificial intelligence in companies such as Google, Facebook, Apple. But this is based on the fact that they have made the decisions to invest in the development of artificial intelligence teams and tools, and they also invested lots and lots of money in order to be able to do this. So yeah, maybe other rich entities could have also invested the same and and then reap the same advantages. So it's a bit like the consequence of investment decisions that have been taken. I think that's the nature of capitalism and progress and funding innovation. So those who take the risk of funding some risky activities, innovative activities, also take the benefits of the results of such innovation.
One final question, and this question is addressed to all the speakers here. So, Ms. Annika, Mr. Iustinian, Mr. Razvan, a short answer. The question is, will AI introduce a change in the human condition? Will it be becoming more human, or will it be becoming more machine? Will it be becoming something else? What do you think? How do you see the future?
We heard a lot of interesting thoughts on this. I personally think that that there is a risk that AI may make our lives more complicated in terms of getting our rights and fundamental rights actually guaranteed. So as you were saying, you know, in the banking sector, but also HR, etc. I think in the beginning, because the understanding of the complexity of these systems will make it very difficult in daily lives to allow us to, you know, if we are treated unfairly, to understand why and how to get our rights actually guaranteed. Because already in this complex world as it is now, this happens. And I think the use of these tools will not make it easier in the beginning. But then I also share the hope, or I also see that it may be possible that in fact it can lead to fairer decisions in some areas. So yeah, I think let's see how it develops, but I think short term it may make things more difficult.
Mr. Iustinian,
so the topic of human condition is a huge topic, and let's say from a philosophical perspective, humans always created and pushed the boundaries of what exists outside their human nature, and they try to create different things than the human nature. The person as a being is the only creature on the earth who is not feeling well in, let's say, in the environment, and that's why it's creating cities, technologies, and it's creating some kind of outside world. Many think that AI and technology will blend with the human condition, will blend, and it will be used, let's say, as a part of our nature. I think this is a philosophical question rather than a technical one. I believe that the advance of the technology will show us if the futurists are true, and the, let's say, biotechnological being will exist. We have some insights also nowadays. There are people who are using technologies in this kind of existence. So I think we have the chance to alter our human condition with technology, and mainly with AI. I hope this alteration will be for the good and for the benefits, and not for the worst.
All right, Mr. Razvan, what do you think?
So I think AI could improve human condition mainly by eliminating from our concerns those mundane tasks that can be automated by AI and other means of automation, such that we can spend less time on fulfilling our basic needs, such as food and shelter, and physiological needs, safety and security, and then having more time to allocate for more higher needs, such as belongingness, esteem and accomplishment, self-actualization, creativity, achieving basically our potential. So in a nutshell, automation will allow us to work less and spend more time on things that we are liking.
You know, there are two schools of thoughts regarding the future. One says the future is beautiful because what's about going to happen. And the other said the future is beautiful because it did not happen. Anyway, we will see. We will see how it goes. We will see if AI will bring us an improvement in human condition. Or maybe AI, let's say, efficiency, at the end, AI is just a glorified optimizer. So that optimization will cut down our happiness and make us, let's say, model workers, highly achievers, and we will lose whatever it's related to our human condition. We'll just be better, we'll just be faster, but we won't be happier, maybe. That's another school of thought. The other said, okay, AI brings prosperity and gives us time, as you said, Mr. Razvan, to focus on the core activities of the human condition, to focus on things that make us happy, to focus on the things that make us valuable. Let's see how it goes. Certainly the future and how AI will shape it is not yet determined. That's why we have so many players, that's why we have so many initiatives, and that's at the end of the day why we have this panel, to grasp the future, to look into it, and to basically make our way, make our change in the human condition in times of when the pandemic changes us, when the digital transformation changes us, when the AI changes us. There are many things that are changing, and we are truly a generation under a lot of pressure to change. But we don't know if it's going to be for the better or for the worse. That only time will tell. In the end, I want to thank to the audience for the questions, for the fact that they have the patience to listen to us. And I would like especially to thank to the speakers for their valuable insights. And I hope they brought much more light into what we think and bring more perspective on what we foresee about the future. Tomorrow we will have another.
Cluj Innovation Days 2020 is part of the Future Skills lifelong learning program. The project is co-financed from the European Social Fund through the Human Capital Operational Program 2014-2020.